On April 7th, 1975, inside the quiet pines of Burlington County, New Jersey, two boys walked across the grounds of a state run institution and were never seen again. Their names were Steven Eugene Anderson, age 17, and David Edward Williams, age 12. They lived at what was then called the New Lisbon State School, a sprawling 1,896-acre campus deep in the New Jersey Pinelands. It was meant to be a protected environment for children with developmental or cognitive disabilities, a place where they would receive care, supervision, and safety. But for reasons that remain unexplained nearly 50 years later, both boys vanished from the property in broad daylight. This is one of the oldest unsolved missing children's cases in New Jersey, a case that still haunts investigators, families, and the local community. And despite sprawling searches and renewed investigations, not a single piece of definitive evidence has ever been found. Steven Eugene Anderson was born April 25th, 1957 in Westville, Gloucester County. At age 17, he was close to adulthood, but struggling with communication difficulties. He was quiet, gentle, and often kept to himself. Staff described him as someone who preferred simple routines and familiar faces. Steven had brown hair, hazel blue eyes, and a chipped front tooth, a detail still noted decades later in his missing file. David Edward Williams, born October 9th, 1962 in Newark, was only 12 at the time he disappeared. He had epilepsy and required daily medication to prevent seizures. Because of this condition, he wore a protective helmet, a detail that makes his disappearance even more alarming. David was smaller than Steven, about 5 foot tall, with black hair and warm brown eyes. Staff recalled that he relied heavily on supervision and routine structure. The two boys were roommates. They were not considered flight risks, and according to institutional records, neither had a history running away. They were just two children living with challenges, depending on adults within the facility to watch over them. Monday, April 7th, 1975, began like any typical day at the New Lisbon State School. Around 4:15 p.m., staff reported seeing both Steven and David walking together near a ball field, heading back towards their residence, a short, familiar path. It was daylight, the area was populated, but nothing seemed unusual. But sometime between that last casual glimpse and the evening head count, both boys disappeared without a trace. When staff realized Steven and David were missing, they initiated an internal search, followed by a full-scale operation involving law enforcement. The boys were nowhere on campus. No one saw them leave, no one reported hearing anything, and no one discovered any clues. No items of clothing, no helmet, no footprints, no sign of distress. Their disappearance was immediate, total, and baffling. The New Lisbon campus sat aside one of the most remote areas of New Jersey, the Pine Barrens, an enormous region of dense forest, swamp, and rugged terrain. Searching this area is a monumental challenge for even experienced teams. Authorities launched an extensive search operation. They had dozens of officers, tracking dogs, bloodhounds, helicopters sweeping overhead, volunteers combing wood trails and marshes. Despite weeks of activity, the search turned up nothing. No clothing, no remains, no disturbed soil or broken bush. The ground seemed untouched, as if the boys had simply evaporated. Investigators at the time leaned toward the idea that the boys may have wandered into the woods and become lost. But as days passed, doubts grew. Steven and David have never been known to run off. David needed medication, and if they had wandered into the forest, search teams should have found at least something, but they didn't. Over the years, investigators, journalists, and online communities have explored a few theories. Theory number 1: the boys wandered off and succumbed to the elements. This was the earliest belief, that the children simply became lost in the vast pinelands. But the complete lack of physical evidence, even after massive search efforts, makes this theory difficult to accept. Theory number 2: was it an accidental drowning? Some suggested that the boys may have fallen into one of the region's bogs, swamps, or lakes. But again, no clothing, no remains, and no traces were ever uncovered. Theory number 3: was it abduction or foul play? This is a theory that has persisted in discussions for decades. How could two boys, both with medical or developmental difficulties, disappear in broad daylight? How could neither be found by ground or air search teams? Could someone have taken them off campus? There is no publicly confirmed evidence of foul play, but many investigators quietly acknowledge that abduction cannot be ruled out. Some former staff and community members have openly speculated that internal misconduct or negligence may have played a role. But again, no conclusive documentation has ever surfaced. And one of the last theories, theory number 4, is it a deliberate cover-up? In some online discussions, particularly within the unsolved mysteries community, users have questioned whether poor documentation or supervision inside the facility may have contributed. But no evidence has confirmed this. But the lack of transparency from institutions during the 1970s has fueled speculations. For nearly 40 years, the case went quiet. Every once in a while, a new article would appear, but there was never any new evidence. Families of the boys never received answers or closures. Steven and David remained listed only as missing, not deceased, not located, simply missing. The state files remained open, but inactive. In 2017, more than 4 decades after the disappearance, the FBI made a surprising announcement. They had added Steven and David to their kidnappings and missing persons list and were renewing investigative efforts. Search teams were seen in wooded areas near Stafford Township, not far from the original institution. The FBI released age-progressed photos showing what the boys might look like as adults in their late 50s. They urged the public to come forward with any information, no matter how small. This announcement reignited public interest and raised the question: did the FBI uncover something new? If they did, it has not been made public. What we do know is that the FBI does not reopen cases lightly. Their renewed interest suggests that the disappearance of Steven Anderson and David Williams may not have been as simple as a wandering away. If alive today, Steven Anderson would be in his late 60s. David Williams would be in his early 60s. The idea of these two boys having survived outside the institution for decades, given their medical needs, is considered extremely unlikely by investigators. Yet, officially, both remain missing, not presumed deceased. The age-progressed images released by the FBI offer a haunting glimpse into the lives they might have lived. Even though chances are slim, they survived long beyond their disappearance. But nearly 50 years later, the disappearance of Steven and David continue to resonate for several reasons. It highlights the vulnerabilities of children living in state care in the 1970s. It raises questions about supervision, oversight, and institutional responsibility. It underscores how quickly two young lives can disappear without explanation. And it stands as one of New Jersey's most enduring and unexplained mysteries. This is not just a story of two missing boys. It is a story of systemic failures, lost evidence, and agonizing silence. Most importantly, it's a story of two human beings, Steven and David, who deserve safety, care, and protection. Today, the pylons remain quiet, the new Lisbon Developmental Center still stands, and somewhere, hidden in the decades of unanswered questions, is the truth about what happened on that April afternoon. The case is still open. The FBI is still accepting tips. And until the truth is uncovered, the disappearance of Steven Anderson and David Williams will remain one of New Jersey's most tragic and haunting mysteries. If you think you might know something, don't hesitate to contact somebody. Contact the New Jersey State Police, the FBI, Global Missing Children's Network, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or any local law enforcement agency. I truly thank you guys for listening and watching. If you like this type of content, please put a like down, subscribe. Until next time, take care.